I have been a fitness trainer and fitness coach since 1972.
72.
72?
I was 1 year old.
I gotta get more,
Yeah.
more money, more stuff. Well, it's called the accumulation mindset. Part of it is insecurity, part of it is fear-based, and it's one of the mindsets that actually creates stored body fat. How can you be spiritual when you're afraid all the time? You know, oh, the bills, the mortgage, the children. You're in a chronic stressed out state. Well, once you get calm, then you can start to, get into your higher mind. This whole idea of exercising for six-pack abs, buns of steel, the people taking the steroids, for what? None of this stuff is going to matter in 20 or 30 years. So why not just work out for health and well-being? Now, how old is Ido Portal?
Oh, probably in his mid-30s.
Yeah, well, he's going to change his philosophy big time in 20 years, believe me.
Maybe.
He's not going to be doing half the shit he's doing now. When you're in your reptilian brain, you're just in that security consciousness. This is all about survival and fear and just competition. Because I believe in an infinite universe. I think that there's enough pie for all of us. So when you have that kind of philosophy, you can just relax.
This week we welcome back American fitness guru, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and all-around incredible dude, Mr. Steve Maxwell. And Steve has actually been traveling the world since he was last on London Reel with 20 kgs on his back and nothing else. This man is a nomad. He goes from city to city talking about what he's passionate about, which is fitness, movement, and now breathing. He was actually in London to teach a one-day breathing seminar, and his thoughts are that we really walk around most of our lives with panic breaths up in the chest, and if we can learn to really control our breathing, we can learn to be more present, reduce anxiety, and enjoy life very much. He also talks about how the entire fitness industry is really based around your fear of death, and how we really need to see through that in order to really recognize the important things out there. And I love spending time with Steve. He's always extremely wise. He's got a great way about mind control and trying to get negative thoughts out of the brain. And we bring him in to talk about fitness, but we end up usually talking about life, about spirituality, philosophy. He talked a little bit about astrology. We pretty much cover everything. So I think you're going to enjoy this with Steve. Again, I have booked my appointment in to see him 1 year from now when he's done going to China and Russia and America and all these other places. He also invited me to Hawaii to go roll some jiu-jitsu, and I need to go do that. So I think you're really going to enjoy my time with Steve. You've probably heard me talking about the 100 people from around the world that have just joined us on our latest Business Accelerator program. I have just been so overwhelmed and so flattered that all of these people would literally invest thousands of dollars in our accelerator program. For the next 8 weeks, we're going to be working intimately with them, building their businesses. We turn their passions into new lifestyles so they can stop working jobs they don't like and start really living their dreams, spreading their messages to the world. I've got an incredible crew. I've got a scientist in Switzerland who has a cure for malaria. I've got a gentleman in Amsterdam who is designing eco-friendly products for all of us humans. I've got a gentleman in Botswana who's going to be teaching African businessmen how to get to the next level. I could go on and on and on. This is the creme de la creme of London Reel Academy, and I couldn't be more humbled or privileged to walk them through exactly how we've built London Real as a global media company. We are 5-year on our anniversary, and we're going to be teaching them the roadmap on how to use media to scale your message and turn it into a product ecosystem that builds real revenues. And I couldn't be more happy. You can see the excitement, and we'll be posting you on their stories over the next few weeks. But now I will leave you with Mr. Steve Maxwell. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Steve Maxwell, the American fitness guru, author, physical educator, breathing coach, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. You have been named one of the top 100 trainers in the USA by Men's Journal, and you travel the world with a single duffel bag nonstop, teaching people like Joe Rogan and many others about mobility, physical training, and breathing. You are 63 years young. Steve, welcome back to London Real.
Brian, thank you for having me on the show. I always look forward to coming to London and getting together. We'll have to do this more than just once a year.
Right? We booked this appointment 1 year ago. You were walking out the door after our last interview, one of our best ones, most epic ones, so many things we covered there. And you're like, Brian, see you again in 1 year. We chose the date, and I just was outside on the sidewalk, and you walk up, and there you are again.
There we are again. I mean, 1 year to the date almost.
I think so. You can time the sun by you, basically. You have the craziest lifestyle where you know where you're going to be in 1 year, and you kind of know what you're going to be doing, but you don't know what specifically you're going to be doing, but you know you're going to be nomadic, right?
Well, I started this nomadic lifestyle right at about 2006, I guess, full time. I had been doing a lot of seminars. I had been living in a camper van like a kid. As I had told you before, I had the first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school on the eastern seaboard of the United States. A personal training gym. I had opened that up in 1990 with my ex-wife, DC Maxwell. And after the divorce, pretty much just got rid of everything I owned, moved in this camper van, drove around being the nomad in the US.
Right, which was the opposite of the life you had.
Which was totally opposite.
Because on your blog, people can go see a picture of the house you used to have. And the house where you used to have 30 pairs of trousers, which is probably
30 pairs of sneaks.
Right, all the stuff, right? You had
all the stuff, man. Every kind of a workout modality you could think of.
Right.
And I was really happy camper in my camper van. And I drove coast to coast the United States 8 times, just living like a nomad, living off my savings at that time. And then I decided, well, it's time to make some money again. Couldn't live off my savings forever. And I realized that knowledge is power, and people are willing to pay good money for knowledge. I have been a fitness trainer and fitness coach since 1972.
72.
72.
I was 1 year old.
And I had been involved with the fitness industry all that time, and in all these different capacities and so forth. But I had my own gym I opened up in 1990, Maxercise. Wow. And it was a real labor of love. It was my dream gym. But all good things come to an end. These things don't last forever. Nothing lasts forever. One of the things that you can be absolutely sure of, nothing's permanent. Right. And there's always change, so you got to roll with it. So once I took to the road, I started getting more and more requests for workshops, seminars. People wanted to tap into some of the knowledge I gained over all those years. And what do you do with a camper van? When you're on the road, you can't just leave it sit. I did put it in storage, but a little known fact, like RVs and even abandoned vehicles, when they sit, mice get in and eat the wiring. That's very, very common. Completely destroys the vehicle. So I thought, well, I should probably sell this thing while it's still worth some money, because one trip was leading to the next trip and leading, you know, everything was just connecting the dots. So I sold it and have been living full-time in Airbnbs and hotels pretty much all over the world.
And that's what you do now. And you slowly, you went from, I think, a backpack that was like 85 liters, and then you went to like 60, and then you went even lower and lower. And now when I give you a London Real t-shirt, you're like, Brian, thanks, but I'm gonna be giving it away before I hit the road again. You travel light.
I travel light. Well, you know, it's really funny because my first big trip after I got rid of the van was here to London. Okay. And I had this huge 90-liter roller duffel, thinking that I needed everything in there, right? And it only took 3 train stops on the tube. I was going to Greenwich. It was a nightmare trying to get that damn thing from one train to another, up flights of stairs, rolling down cobblestone streets. I says, this sucks.
Yeah, we make you work for it.
This is too much. So I went right on down to Cotswold and bought like an Osprey bag, which was still pretty big. It's like 65 liters. And then I've even downsized from there. Now I use a Tom Bin aeronaut bag, really spiffy.
Right.
You know, I'm not sponsored by them, and it's just a great bag. I researched every kind of travel bag you could, and I finally settled on the Tom Bin. It's one of just such a versatile, nice bag, fits into the overhead. So I switched from check-in with these huge duffels to just carry on.
Right.
So my entire life, everything I own is in a little man purse, like a little cafe bag with my iPad and some, you know, personal stuff, and then my bag.
Your back. Do you think we could learn a lot from that? Do you think all of us humans could just downsize to that? And do you think it would really probably change the world if we actually didn't have stuff to worry about?
Well, people get really addicted to their things. A lot of people go through life pretty much working jobs that they don't particularly like. In some cases, hating their jobs, counting the days to retirement. Early in my life, you know, I used to hear my father. He was one of the few guys in my neighborhood that actually used to say, Steve, I can't wait to get out of bed in the morning to go to work. I just love my job. And I grew up with this, listening to this, and then I heard the other fathers saying, oh my God, Monday, I have to go back to work. Oh, so terrible. I made up my mind when I was 12 years old that I was going to find something I really loved and really liked, so I wouldn't be like all those other dads, and I'd be like my own father. So I had a good role model in that respect.
Okay.
So people working these type of jobs,
right.
you know, the American dream, right? They buy the house and you know, they get married and they have 2.5 kids, and you know, we talked about this before, but they're just stuffing that house full of material.
We're trying to leave these lifestyles, and we don't even know why we're trying to do it.
They're trying to find fulfillment through things and materials, and it does give you like a little temporarily, you know, jolt of happiness, you know, a little temporary jolt of some type of fulfillment, I suppose.
Right.
But it goes away quickly, and then you're just looking for the next thing to buy. And you know, people fill their house with furniture and electronics and all this stuff, and then they run out of room, and they fill their basement and their garages and their attics, and then they have to go out and get storage units, and it's crazy. And they don't even use this stuff. Wardrobes full of things. I mean, there was a period where I was a householder. You know, I can remember literally counting. I had 35 different pairs of shoes, mostly sneakers, every kind of tracksuit, sweatsuit. You know, I would tell myself, well, I'm into business, and you know, this is all part of my business apparel,
but it's just nonsense.
But it was just bullshit.
Yeah,
it was just buying just for the sake of buying.
So anybody watching us or listening out there, maybe they should take a look in that wardrobe and maybe get rid of half of it or 95% of it.
Just give it away to charity.
Yeah,
you know? You'll feel good about yourself.
And see how it might change your perspective on everything, right?
Well, it's called the accumulation mindset. You see, you have this accumulation. Part of it is insecurity. Part of it is fear-based. You know, I got to get more. More money. You know, more stuff. And it's one of the mindsets that actually creates stored body fat.
Okay, interesting.
You know, that's one reason why I think a lot of people have trouble with diets and so forth. They have this accumulation, adding to oneself. And like they themselves are not good enough, they always have to add something new.
Right, and I want to talk later about the mind and the body and how those two, in your opinion, are related, and I want to get into more of those details. But before we do, you've been gone for a year. I've been here in London mostly, but you're out traveling the world. You're meeting all sorts of different people, different kind of cultures, different kind of ideas. I'm just wondering what I can learn from you that you've seen in the past year. You know, what are some of the kind of things that you've learned? I had a guy in here named Kevin Kelly a couple months ago, and he founded Wired Magazine. He's a really wise old guy, and he said, I asked him how old he was, and he said, Brian, you're only as old as the last time you changed your mind. And I was wondering what you've changed your mind about in the last year, based on your travels, based on things like that.
It's not that I've really changed my mind so much. It's just that I've been able to confirm a lot of the beliefs that I've had for the last few years. Okay. What I'm finding is, A, don't believe anything you read in the media. Most of it's lies. Don't believe anything you hear on television. Most of it's lies. Maybe the people don't knowingly lie, but you can't believe anything that you hear. It's all sensationalized. It's all based on getting people upset or fearful.
Fear.
It's for the same reason why people like to go to horror movies or scary movies.
Yeah.
They like to be scared. And the media is kind of like an ongoing horror show.
Yeah.
And
it's like
people,
Halloween every day.
Well, they get like this
vicarious
thrill, you know.
Right.
The jihadist, the boogeyman, you know, and
always something.
it's always some crazy something, right?
Right, and then we believe these cultures are these bad people. Name a country, oh, they're this, they're that.
They're this and that.
Which we shouldn't believe.
And the Chinese, they're militarizing the South China Sea, and look out, you know, and oh, North Korea, oh my God, and Putin, oh, you know, the evil empire
right.
of the.
But you get to Russia.
It's a new Cold War, and
you get to Russia and train with those guys, and
I've been to Russia, and
they're cool.
I was treated like gold.
Right.
And I've been to China. I was, you know, what I find is people are more alike than they are different. They just want to have a good life. Yeah. They just want to raise their kids in peace.
Yeah.
They, you know, they mean us no harm. You know, it's all just a lot of nonsense. And I go to these places, and people talk about this place is so dangerous and that. Probably no place more dangerous than New York, but yet I feel very comfortable there too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you attract what you think.
Yeah.
If you are fearful, you're going to attract negative situations. So if you're going in all these places with a fear-based mentality,
yeah.
you know, what you concentrate on is what you have a tendency to, the universal law of attraction.
Yeah, we always had one guy in the jiu-jitsu class, which would always get in fights when he went out. And then like the rest of us, never got into a single fight. And it's just like, what's wrong with you? Like, what are you doing? What's this energy? And then once you got to know him, he had this weird, insecure kind of thing, and he would just attract this bad energy.
He's just itching to get into it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, you know, at one point, I can't say I always embraced this philosophy. There was a time when I was a bit insecure and paranoid and fearful. I owned guns, like many Americans, you know. I had several guns. And I realized one day, a gun only has one purpose, to kill. All right? I'm not a hunter. So that means the only thing I would kill would be another human. I don't want that karma. Secondly, I realized if you have a gun, you can't help but visualize using it. You see yourself using it. You start to visualize this kind of negative situation. There's going to be a point where you're going to put yourself in a situation where you may feel like you have to use it. I got rid of the guns that next day. I realized it's a tool of the fear people. People that are fearful and afraid, they're the ones that have these type of instruments of destruction.
And so what does that say about America with, you know, more guns than people? You know,
a lot of really fearful people, really, really afraid.
A
lot of that is fed by the media.
Right, fed by the media. Of all the countries you visited, what are the ones you like the most, and what are the ones you like the least?
I love Australia.
Okay, why?
You know, I just love their attitude. They're upbeat, sunny, incredibly funny sense of humor. A little crude, but I kind of like that. Just very funny people, and just very upbeat and happy most of the time.
Okay.
So it's like definitely Sydney, Melbourne. Further north is beautiful, like the Gold Coast. A little hot for my taste.
Okay.
During the winter, it's nice though.
Okay.
But yeah, it's one of my all-time favorite places.
Least favorite country? You can be honest.
Well, I'm not real thrilled about Bahrain.
Okay.
That's mostly because it's really very little green. You know, I grew up in forest in Pennsylvania, in a little town called Carlisle, Pennsylvania. So to my way of thinking, that's something that's really important to me. Lush green trees is one reason I like London, the beautiful parks. And the fact it's so hot, oh my God. So I guess the climate just kills it for me. I try not to be overly sensitive to climates and not let it control me, but it's pretty hard to ignore 110 degrees, you know.
Yeah. Well, we've all been in Vegas, or my head grandparents.
Well, that's another place
in
that's like,
Phoenix,
whoa.
Arizona. I used to go in the summer, and it's just like, it's so oppressing. And again, if you want to be outside or you want to go running, it's just, it really does change who you are. So, yeah.
But once again, I say least favorite, but yet the people that I deal with are fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps me going back, because I really like the people that I'm dealing with. I meet some wonderful people.
Sunday, you're giving a seminar here in London. Now that's not different because you travel the world teaching people this knowledge, like you said, all this knowledge you've accumulated, wrestling background, jiu-jitsu. I mean, you were hanging out with the Gracies before the UFC started, and we would talk more about that later. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the UFC. But you're giving a seminar on Sunday on breathing.
On breath work.
From breath work, from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m., breath work only. And I want to know more about it. And you mentioned it last time, and I heard you say it, but it went in one ear out the other, or maybe you sowed a seed in me, I don't know. And since then, I picked up a few other pieces, and we had Wim Hof the Iceman in here, and I saw him do some breath work. And funny enough, we had a super focus group on Friday. 100 of our London Reelers came, our Academy members came, and I led them in like a 25 breath work exercise, 2 of them, and collectively in the room, something powerful happened, Steve. I don't know what it was. But when I do the breathing on my own, it's good. But when I do it in a room with these people, something shifted. And I thought I should ask you about it, since you probably have forgotten more about breath work than most people know. What is it about the breath that's important? When did you realize it? And what can you tell us?
I was actually later in life when I really got serious about it. I was always aware of, breathing and breath work.
Because martial arts
as a physical education major,
Yeah.
and then as a wrestler and so forth.
Yeah.
Everyone's experienced that horrible feeling of being winded or out of breath, which can evoke a real panic response. The first time I became acutely aware of breathing was training with the Gracies. And the Master Rickson Gracie was a real breath master, as well as being probably the greatest expression of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, possibly Jiu-Jitsu ever. Some people might argue that Kimura and maybe Maeda, who taught the Gracies, would be right up there, but certainly Rickson would stand out as one of the greatest.
Right, and we have footage of him in modern times so we can see it.
But all his brothers also were privy to a lot of the same information.
Okay.
And I would hear them when they're training and wrestling, breathing in this particular style. But they weren't teaching it at the time.
Okay.
And all I know is that they weren't out of breath, and I was. Part of that was the technique. I would watch Rickson and Hoyce and Hoyler literally wrestle an entire room full of people during seminars and not be out of breath. I'm thinking, how can they do that? What are they doing? And they weren't teaching it. Now they are. Rickson actually, in all his seminars now, actually does like an hour and a half to 2 hours sometimes of just breath work before you even start doing the jiu-jitsu.
Really, and he's famous in the movie Choke for doing that breathing, sequence in the movie where he's, moving his stomach is collapsing and he's doing that breathing piece. That's an epic piece. Right?
Well, I'm really into superheroes. There was a really cool where he's teaching Dr. Banner, the Incredible Hulk, breathing to calm down. Did you ever see the movie? It's pretty good.
Is he actually in the movie?
Ed Norton was playing.
Oh, and he's in the movie, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I heard about this.
He's like this. He's hiding out from the world in the Amazon, and he meets this spiritual martial arts guru who teaches him how to breathe.
Okay.
That's Rickson.
That's Rickson. Awesome.
But that's that was real life. It wasn't. He was playing himself in that movie. Rickson was.
Right.
But the point is this: chair sitting, and the sedentary lifestyle of America and most of the industrialized countries in the world. You would have to include, Japan, certainly the UK, Germany, and so forth. People are no longer breathing diaphragmatically. A lot of people are inhaling through the mouth, breathing in the upper chest where the panic receptors are, and they're not bringing the breath down into the lower lobes of the lungs. The lower lobes of the lungs is where the calming receptors are. It keeps you calm, even in an emergency. And it's a great advantage to be able to learn to breathe into those lower lobes of the lungs all the time, even during athletic training, especially in combat. Now, the Russians have this system of martial arts. It's actually called the sistema, where it's all based on the breath. They claim it comes from way back to the ancient Christian monks who were defending Christendom against the infidel. The Tatars, the Mongolians, all these. Russia was always constantly invaded by all these different guys. And these Christian monks developed their own martial art, very similar to the Shaolin monks. But it's interesting because the Shaolin monks use the same type of breathing. The yogis use the same type of breathing, the pranayama. You'll find it Qigong, Tai Chi, Kung Fu, Russian sistema, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, where they learned it, I don't know, but that's when I first became aware of it.
Okay.
So I
these
started.
Cultures independently are coming up with similar techniques.
And I'm thinking that all great minds think alike.
Yeah.
People came up with the same conclusions, same ideas, all over the world, similar but slightly different. So I started looking into the breathing thing a lot, and I first went to the Sistema guys. Studied with up in Toronto with Vladimir Vasiliev, later with Michael Ryabko in Moscow. Took a lot of workshops. I went down to Krasnodar. There was another type of system. There was more than one type of system. Alexei Alexeyevich Kadashnikov, he's like an old man. A lot of people credit him with the Russian military martial arts style. But these were different things I looked into myself as a student. I've studied yogic pranayama. Dr. Pasant Lad, who's a Ayurvedic physician in New Mexico. He also has a clinic in India somewhere. But I went to a workshop in New Mexico, and he taught me 13 different ways of breathing for different health aspects. So I've been piecing this stuff together. Of course, because of my affiliation with the Russian Sistema guys, I ran into the Butyeko, Butyeko was a Russian physician who treated his patients with specific breathing. And all these things together kind of made the Steve Maxwell version.
Okay, but 8 hours of breathing, don't the students want that? They want some Steve Maxwell
we test them
training?
first. We test them first.
Okay.
First we find out what kind of breather you are. Are you clavicular? Are you intercostal? Are you diaphragmatic?
How do you tell?
Are you inhale? There's a little test you can do. You just ask people to breathe and you just observe their structure.
Okay.
And once you determine what kind of breather they are they inhaling through their nose or their mouth? Then you teach them then you measure how many times a minute they're breathing. There's a test called the control pause, or some people call it the BOLT test, the body oxygen level test. How long can you comfortably hold your breath on the exhale?
Yeah.
Not till you bleed from the eyes. It's not like competitive. But on the exhale, you just time yourself to see how long it is until you feel like you really want to breathe. And then you should be able to resume normal breathing, or you pushed it too hard. That tells a lot about a person's general health and their CO2 tolerance. It also tells you how well their tissues are being oxygenated. So very simple little test that people can even do at home.
Okay.
Once you have this information, then you can start to prescribe breathing exercises to help them improve that BOLT score, that body oxygen level test. Because if they have a short time frame between the breaths, it means that their breathing is very inefficient and they're not getting the proper oxygen. Like we could argue all day about diets, let's say, for example, high carb, low carb, different nutrients. I mean, people, blah, blah, blah. It almost turns into fist fight sometimes with the, Mediterranean versus paleo versus Eskimo, versus vegan. I mean, it just goes on and on.
Right.
But I think we all could agree that we need calories, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Some people would even argue you don't need carbs. I think we would definitely agree that you definitely need water, but the one nutrient that people are not talking about is oxygen.
Okay.
And this is the one that people are missing a lot.
How many people are breathing correctly?
In my workshops, it's shocking how many people aren't breathing correctly. Occasionally you'll see people that have had a little training, but most people are not.
Okay.
And they're very surprised, even athletic guys. And they have very low BOLT scores, meaning that they're not getting the proper oxygenation of the tissues. It results in a lot of, Butyeko, he believed that there's over 200 degenerative diseases associated with poor breathing habits.
Wow. Okay.
So I don't know, I'm not a researcher. I don't consider myself a scientist. I go more on empirical evidence. I'll see something and it sounds logical, I'll try it. And if it works for Steve Maxwell, well, then I'll start to show other people if they're willing to listen.
Okay.
So I started embracing these breathing techniques. Man, I'm telling you, Brian, my energy level shot up. I wasn't that bad to start, but I definitely had some work to do. My Bolt score was not high at all. I was barely making like 21 seconds.
Okay.
You want a minimum Bolt score of about 40 seconds.
That's when I exhale normally now, like
yeah, you
this?
just exhale normally and then you just time
And I
yourself.
don't do any breathing before
Yeah,
that.
and then when you feel a strong urge to breathe,
Okay.
like you feel some stress,
And you're at 41 seconds now, which is good, and 20 seconds is probably not so good.
no, not good at
Okay.
all. And then you'll swallow. It's just on the edge of health.
Okay.
So I improved my Bolt score tremendously. One of the techniques that I used to suspect that I might inhale through my mouth at night. A lot of people breathe, light snoring perhaps. I started using a Yaker technique of taping my mouth.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Unbelievable how energized and recovered you
High
feel.
quality sleep.
And my sleeping dropped from about 8 hours to like 6.5 hours.
That's crazy.
I feel great.
Tape your mouth. That
You
must
just
feel
tape your
weird.
mouth. A little piece of tape. They
And-
actually make special tape for it,
Okay.
but I just use old athletic tape and
You always
So-
have some strange techniques. But
pretty
then,
weird shit.
I was in the shower a few days ago and I thought of you, Steve. And it was strange because I hadn't talked to you in a year, and I get a lot of ideas in my head. And I had one of these back scratcher brushes, and I was scratching my back, and then I picked it up in my hand and I started scratching all my skin. And I was like, wait a second, this is what Steve Maxwell does.
yeah. I use it dry, not in the shower.
Okay, right.
It's called Swedish dry brush massage. It's been around forever. The Germans, the Austrians, the Scandinavians have used dry brush for centuries.
Okay.
You just basically brush your skin while it's dry in circular movements, starting with the feet, working little circles up. Very good for getting rid of lymph, circulation. Incredibly good for the skin, keeping the skin young, sloughing off any old,
And that's a regular practice for you.
old skin. And so
Okay.
I travel with a little brush.
Okay.
I'll get rid of it. I wash it, but then the bristles start going a little too soft. Should be pretty firm. And in the beginning, it's a little uncomfortable, but then your skin starts to really, you look forward to it.
Right, and you probably
Feels fantastic.
better oxygen and things like that.
But,
Back to the breath.
But it is good for the skin. It does
Yeah.
help the aging of the skin. I mean, my face has stayed pretty wrinkle-free. I can remember my father at my age. Man, his face was, looked like a Shar-Pei dog.
Yeah. You look great, Steve.
But it really does help the keep the youthful appearance.
You always have this spark when I see you, and I've just always got this light going on with you. So it's like the skin and stuff too, but you always got
It's the
this.
breathing, man.
Yeah. So talk to me about breathing. Do you have certain techniques and patterns you do during your day? Do you have something you do during the morning? Or are you just
do
aware of your breath all the
walking
time?
breathing ladders.
Okay.
There's breathing ladders where you match breath to the step. You start real low. 2-step inhale, 2-step exhale, then 3, then 4. And you work your way up as high as you can until you're really uncomfortable. You build up an oxygen debt. Then you use a technique called burst breathing. You pay off the oxygen debt. You might start at 1 again and go back up.
Okay.
There's triangular breathing. Inhale so many steps. Exhale so many steps. Hold the breath so many steps.
Okay.
Or inhale so many steps. Hold the breath the same amount of steps. Exhale. Then there's square breathing. This is actually an ancient yogi technique. The tradition was inhale in 4 steps. Hold the breath for 4 steps, exhale 4 steps, hold the breath for 4 steps. So out of every 16 steps, you're only inhaling in 4.
Okay.
And then there's another technique called endogenous breathing, which is really good for athletes and martial artists, because sometimes you don't have time to take a big inhale. Maybe someone's throwing some punches at you, or maybe you're in a flurry, or someone has their knee in your belly, or whatever. So you take a quick sniff of air, and then you do a prolonged exhale.
Right. But
Very similar to have you ever taken lifeguard training or survival swimming or anything?
maybe.
I had to get my
slowly
water
let-
safety instructor badges.
Okay.
It's like when you're doing the drown proofing, like you're just laying in the water, and then you exhale, take a sniff of air, and man, you can just relax in the
Okay.
water for days if you'd have to. Like if you fell overboard in a ship or
I always had a hard time controlling my breathing when I was boxing or rolling jiu-jitsu. Because most of the time I was panicking.
You're not the only one.
Right.
But see, if you're in your upper chest and you get those panic receptors, you're in fight or flight.
Yeah.
You become over-adrenalized, right? Then you have all these negative stress hormones to deal with also, because you're in fight or flight. Your higher reasoning goes south. Your fine motor skills go south. Your rational decision-making is impaired. So you basically put yourself in kind of an animal-like state, reptilian brain state. If you can keep the breath in the lower lobes of the lungs, you prevent that panic. That's what Hickson was so good at. That's what Hoyler was so good at. Hoist Gracie was so good at. They were amazing at being able to control their breathing so that even when they were against monster guys trying to smash them, they could stay calm and relaxed. It's what the Sistema masters do.
Yeah.
These Russian martial arts guys.
They don't tense up. They let things
They
flow.
don't tense up.
Right.
And they teach it to the Russian special ops community.
Were the Russians a little hesitant to teach some American all this stuff? Do you have to get in with
not
their
at all.
graces?
They were very
really
open-minded ever since the Iron Curtain fell. Okay. And I've been working with this Navy SEAL down in Virginia Beach. He's a jiu-jitsu blue belt. And he was telling me that the SEALs, the U.S. SEALs, have adopted a lot of this same type of breathing techniques.
Okay.
You know, because everyone's learning everyone's system.
Yeah.
There's no secrets anymore.
Right, and like you said, breathing's kind of popular these days. So.
Breathing has become a very popular.
Yeah. Is this just one of the many things that is actually keeping us less spiritual as a human species, like breathing up, you know, in these panic reactions?
Well, think about it this way. One of my theory is where breathing goes out. First of all, I've never seen an infant that doesn't breathe through the nose diaphragmatically. Right. Usually right about first, second grade, you already notice kids, you know, I've been really observing this, are already into their upper chest, where these panic receptors are.
Okay.
How can you be spiritual when you're afraid all the time, right? Because you are in the upper chest, the fear lobes, right, the fight or flight. You're in a chronic stressed out state. You know, oh, the bills, the mortgage, the children, oh my God, the children.
All this stuff in my house.
Oh my God, the terrorists, they're going to get me. The boogeyman, the car payment, the insurance. You know, it's like it's hard to relax and be spiritual when you're just in survival mode.
Right, in the lizard brain.
And what this does is puts you in survival mode.
Okay. Okay, so this is a big thing that you teach now.
You got to bring it down.
Is this the cornerstone of what you teach now when you travel the world? Or?
Well, let's put it this way. As a trainer in the past, I didn't pay any attention to it at all. People just want to come in and basically get their ass kicked, right? They think that, you know, if they're, you know, making all this noise and, you know, like CrossFit or whatever.
I've done that before a lot.
Well, we have. We all have.
Yeah.
We all have. They think they're getting a workout. But in reality, they're probably doing more harm than good.
Just starving themselves of oxygen.
So
really.
here we have trainers that are not even paying attention to the most basic, fundamental human process, the breath. Then they're loading them up with these intense exercises. They're not looking at their structure, looking at their balance. A lot of people already have horrible movement patterns. They can't squat, they can't even do, and then they're loading these bad movement patterns and causing stress in people that are already overly stressed. Now sometimes people say, oh, I got to go to the gym and I got to work out really, really hard, you know, and they're breathing with this horribly dysfunctional breathing, getting over adrenalized. You could become addicted to adrenaline like you do caffeine or drugs. You become an adrenaline junkie. And yes, you do feel high for a while, but then you have a terrible crash, and then you're chronically tired and exhausted all day long. And then, you know, they're drinking coffee to bring it back up again, and no wonder people are suffering from adrenal fatigue and adrenal burnout and so forth. Their habits are creating this terrible drain on their body.
Right.
But you can, with the proper breath, you'll find that you'll need less sleep. You don't need to go to the caffeine.
I'm going to try taping my mouth this week.
Well, that's interesting how it does. I would tell you, if people want to read more about this, a good book to start with is The Oxygen Advantage. You can buy it on Kindle, Amazon, UK.
Okay.
Download it on your iPhone, read it on the bus or the train.
Okay.
read it at the office. Simple little book. Guy makes, he's not the only game in town. He's all into nasal only breathing. Some authorities feel it's perfectly okay to exhale through the mouth.
But not inhale through the mouth?
Never.
Really?
Yeah.
What if you got some nose blockages?
Maybe if I'm swimming.
Okay. What if you got some nose blockages?
Well, you see my nose, right? It's crooked. I broke my nose about 4 times in my athletic career. Headbutts and stuff in wrestling and accidental stuff. And I have a deviated septum as a result. And I actually went to a certified rolfer. This is a body realignment specialist who literally stuck their fingers up the nasal passages and realigned the nose. And then they showed me how to do it. Every now and again, I'll take olive oil or sesame oil, and I'll just very gently work my fingers into the nose just to keep it open.
Wow.
And it's like, also another thing that happens to a lot of older men especially, but even guys in their 40s, you start getting those boar bristles in your nose. I recommend going to a good Turkish barbershop and getting it waxed and rip that stuff out of there. You'd be shocked at how getting rid of the excess silica and your
helps your breathing.
Oh my God.
More tips from Steve Maxwell. Let me ask you a question. You've been in the fitness business since I was 1 year old. You've seen it come and go. I mean, you must have seen the Nautilus machines in the 80s and the 70s.
I was totally in the Nautilus
And you had one of the first gyms, you were one of the first people to train, people in gyms and train men's classes and things like that.
This is before personal training even existed.
Right. So I want to get your thoughts on the industry as a whole and where we are today. I got a quote from you where you said, basically, the entire health and fitness industry and diet is all based on fear. And the fear is based on the fear of dying and of death. And that's pretty deep. Because a lot of us, when we see that, we don't see that far down the rabbit hole. We just see things that, oh yeah, you need to be healthy and that kind of thing. But if you look at it that way, what can you show us that we should see about it? And then what are some of the conclusions that we can draw?
Baby boomers in particular are starting to see the end. There's, I like to think of it as light at the end of the tunnel.
The light, not the darkness.
The light.
Yeah.
My dad's a people are very fear of their own demise. It's something that's very uncomfortable to talk about.
Yeah.
People don't want to talk about it.
It affects our behaviors in many ways we don't understand.
All these midlife crisis. People are afraid of dying. They're trying to, act out. This huge push for health and fitness. Trying to preserve your longevity because you're afraid of your ultimate demise.
Yeah.
So we don't talk about it too much. I've overcome my fear of death. I have. I'm not saying that I just want to go out and die, but I'm not afraid of dying. I got very comfortable with the idea because I think of it like birth, right? A soul comes into this world, people are born, and people die. Why can't we think of death like birth, right? A being is ushered into the world, a being is ushered out of the world. It's the same basic process, isn't it? It's the same exact thing. But all this fear, I think, is really fueling, especially for the older group, a lot of this fitness stuff. People are trying to, youthify themselves and get young and fortify themselves. And like I say, I'm all for it. I'm not saying that people should neglect themselves and just accept the inevitable. But what I'm saying is you shouldn't do it out of fear.
Okay. So know why you're doing it.
Yeah.
Okay. And
but
why?
It's such an uncomfortable thing. Like, like the old joke. They asked the Protestant minister, like, well, what do you think is going to happen when you die? He says, oh, for sure, I'm going to go to the pearly gates and I'm going to be in paradise and in heaven. But let's not talk about it because it's too depressing. It's like, really?
So what does that tell us about the health industry? That we should just be looking at things through that lens and we should stay away from things that are playing on our fear of dying and try to think about why we're really training, which is what? To be present in our bodies and feel connected to this world?
This whole idea of exercising for six-pack abs, buns of steel, baseball biceps, the people taking the steroids or the, drugs and so forth. I mean, I could see it if you're like an athlete and, 1/10 of 1% improvement in performance might be the difference between winning and losing. I could see the temptation. I don't agree with it, but I can see where you might be tempted. But for average people to do this stuff, you know, and the plastic surgeries, I mean, some of this stuff is just so bizarre. For what? It's not going to matter one damn bit. None of this stuff is going to matter in 20 or 30 years. None of it. So why not just work out for health and well-being and to feel good, to look your best and to feel your best. That should be number one.
Right, and that's your mantra. Look
And
your
then
best, feel
work
your best.
out, and then the second thing, of course, is performance. You know, being able to do stuff. But even that is kind of a false, because, you know, none of it's sustainable. We were talking about doing bar and muscle ups and things.
Yeah.
Cool trick, great stupid pet trick.
Yeah.
But, you know, is it
right?
sustainable? The risk of injury is great, especially as you get up there a little bit.
So I spent a year working on the bar muscle up because I don't know, I saw it and I thought it was cool.
It's kind of cool.
It's kind of cool, but I obsessed over it and I basically hung from a bar repeatedly for many, many weeks over a 52-week period. I think I got it finally, and I think I got it like 4 or 5 times. And then I think I lost it, and then I kind of
It goes away
interest.
almost as quickly as you get.
Because and also I wasn't using my body. I wasn't really. I don't know. For me, it was kind of a hollow thing to chase.
So, all these things are unsustainable, and like I say, they won't matter a damn bit. Now, do I train? Yes, I do.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, and I'll see you on the inside.
You as the observer, the real you, not the Brian Rose, but the observer who's actually looking at these thoughts, you can select the ones that you wish to address, and then you just dismiss the other ones. And generally speaking, I use this system called affirmation, or you affirm positives. So if I do find myself dwelling on some type of negative situation, I'll make positive counter affirmations and keep my mind focused on only the good and seeing only the good.